When I have been analyzing this situation between Fox News and Tucker Carlson, it doesn't just seem like a thoughtless and just self-destructive move by Fox News because they don't understand that their audience is based and they linger in outdated, ineffective establishment tactics, right? To me, it actually goes beyond this. I don't think this is just going to be destructive for Fox. To me, this seems like the beginning of the end of the cable news industry, which a lot of us in this industry, or people, we've been in this industry before, have seen this coming for almost a decade now. What are your thoughts on this? Like, is this the beginning of the end?
Yeah, you nailed it. Absolutely. I mean, cable news, it seems like a model that has way outlived when it was supposed to end. You know, it seems, who would have thought that it would still be around now? And it really does feel like Tucker was the last thing keeping it together and keeping it alive, because that was the only thing exciting happening on cable news, and people would tune in just for that. I mean, I got a stupid cable subscription just to watch him. I never would have done that before. Never had cable in my life. And so it does feel like that. And it feels like a long time coming. And I don't think that cable executives understand that. I think that they still think that they're top dog. One thing, however, though, I have to say with that, and I think this is why Tucker's departure is so upsetting and why it felt like a death, I think, for a lot of people when we first heard it, because while we're not interested in what happens on cable, we plebeians aren't interested. Our leaders deeply care about what happens on cable news. They do not care what's happening on Twitter. They don't care what's happening on the internet. They still want to know what's happening on cable, and they listen to cable because they're also out of touch and don't relate to anyone. So that, I think, is really upsetting for a lot of people, because Tucker did have their ear when he was on cable. And now if he goes to Twitter or whatever, I think there's a fear that, you know, he's not gonna be able to embarrass Lindsey Graham or whoever like he was so effectively able to on Fox. That's, I think, where it has its power. And same with, like, you know, these horrible rags like the New York Times, who I used to write for, that all these politicians, all these incredibly vain and shallow and insecure people still deeply care about being on cable news and in those pages. That, you know, they that's what they really care about.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very insightful point, because a lot of Republicans, even establishment, lived in fear of the wrath of Tucker. And if they're not watching cable, if he's not on cable news anymore and that's what they watch, maybe they won't feel that same pressure for him. On the other hand, they're going to entirely miss, as the Republican Party becomes more based, as the Republican Party wants to fight back and play offense and construct a nation of ordered liberty instead of this squishy Republican, big spenders, nonsense, basically Democrat light. They're just going to be surprised when they're voted out of office by the people that they refuse to listen to. So I look forward to that day. Chadwick, this was delightful to talk to you. I hardly even need to pitch your book, because I know that every single person who's listening to the show and watching this show probably has already bought it. If you haven't, go to tuckerthebook.com. It's always better to buy directly from the publisher. Go to tuckerthebook.com. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure.
But here's what's interesting. When we're talking about this industry of cable news and kind of taking a step back from it, not just thinking about the shows we like to watch at a certain time, when we're talking about the longevity or lack thereof of this industry, there's a report that was just out this week from Fox News. It was from Rolling Stone, that reported that Fox News has laid off their investigative team for their website, for their digital side. And reportedly, this was because perhaps they didn't have, or the speculation, I should say, is that they didn't have the money following the Dominion settlement to pay this team. Fox denies this. Fox says, no, these people on this team were just realigned. They were offered different positions in the company, even though the team itself was dissolved. I don't know. That seems to me like corporate language that says if someone's offered a different position and they turn it down, it generally means that they were offered an inferior position with a pay cut. Which may be why some of these people on the investigative team didn't take this money. But even this, I'm not sure that this is exclusive to Fox. Maybe it's related to Fox not having money now because they settled with Dominion for, almost $800 million. But maybe this is just an illustration of what's happening in cable news in general, because it's not just Fox that's laying people off. It's all cable news organizations, or almost all of them, are having massive layoffs because the industry itself is dying. I know I talk about this a lot. I find this interesting because I think in 10 years from now, you and I sitting here, it's not going to be, the news industry isn't going to be what it is today. Right now, it's divided between new media, like what we're doing here, building this together, and legacy media, which is either cable news, like Fox and CNN, or print media like New York Times and Washington Post. We've seen over the course of the past decade, regional newspapers, citywide newspapers already are going under. People already rejected that because they want to read their news online. We're seeing cable news dying, but dying sort of this slow, agonizing death that those involved with it are still in denial about. 10 years from now, it's not going to exist in its current form. There is something like between 2016 and now, 70% of people had a cable subscription 10 years ago, and only 40% of people do right now. That is only going to increase. That number is going to be, there's going to be even a greater disparity, which means those on cable news are not going to be as influential, and those on cable news are not going to be creating the revenue, both for the company and then for themselves, that they are right now. In fact, this conversation, not just related to this show, what we're building here, this is becoming more obvious to a lot of powerful players within conservative media. In fact, Sean Spicer, the former press secretary for President Trump, he sat down and talked with Dave Rubin, who is one of the pioneers of new media, building this media empire. First, he built his own show, and then, he helped found Locals. He combined Locals with Rumble. I mean, this is like a massive player in new media. Sean Spicer sat down with Dave Rubin and talked about the exact reasons that you and I often discuss about why cable news is dying. Sean said this is why he left his primetime role at Newsmax because, and I'll let you hear him say this for himself, because of who he wants to influence. Take a listen.
I count you as a mentor and someone that blazed a trail. You look at Bongino and Beck, what Megyn Kelly's done, Liz Wheeler, the ability to go out and not be constrained by a network. Don't get me wrong, I'm not disparaging. I mean, they have a role, but it's a set time for a set amount of minutes. I looked at the upcoming cycle, President Trump's obviously the front runner in the Republican nomination. I spent 6 years at the RNC, last cycle as chief strategist, 2 presidential cycles, 10 members of Congress, countless campaigns, and I thought I have something to add, and I don't know that I want to be constrained by a network. And
was it just technical constraint, like meaning time? Like a lot of times when I do cable shows, even when I would do your show, it's like we'd have 6 minutes, let's say, and by minute 5, now we're getting going, and then they have
Correct.
So was that it, or was it more of a content, like they don't want you talking about certain things?
No. It wasn't that much. To your point, you have 6 minutes to break down a very complex subject. Why the rules of the party, why the debate structure is what it is. It doesn't lend itself to 6 minutes. First and foremost. And second, maybe you want to go on for 20 minutes. Maybe you want to do some additional videos. The thing that people have to understand is that when you sign a network contract, whether it's Newsmax or Fox or ABC, the trade-off that you're making is, I will restrict what I do to that network. That's what they're buying from you. Is saying, well, you've got a lot of expertise or insight. We're basically buying it from you so that you can't go anywhere else and display that. I get that. But there was a point at which I realized the future is independent media, the ability to put stuff out and allow it to go on different platforms. So maybe you want to put out a tweet, obviously Rumble and YouTube, Locals. There's all these different ways of getting things out. And you look at the major cable stations, Dave, the average age of a viewer is 70 years old. Now, those are a very highly, it's a group that votes in a very high propensity.
They vote,
right?
Yeah.
So it's important. But if I want to have an influence in the next generation of Americans who I feel that I've got something to offer, talk about the ills of the direction of the current administration or what have you, I thought, is that really where I want to be and constrained to that?
Hi guys, it's Liz Wheeler. Don't forget to watch my show, The Liz Wheeler Show, every night at 7 p.m. on the First TV. You can download the free First TV app, or you can visit thefirsttv.com/Liz and start watching today.